you every week at the very beginning of the show about Compassion and Hope Pregnancy Center. Their mission statement is simple. Compassion and Hope Pregnancy Center is a Christ-centered nonprofit ministry offering life-affirming alternatives to abortion and compassionate care to those who face pregnancy and abortion-related issues. Real simple, one sentence. So if you haven't already done so, or if you have been thinking about doing so, won't you please call Compassion and Hope Pregnancy Center at 478-HOPE. That's 208-478-HOPE. See what you can do to help a mother with a yet-to-be-born child or a just-born child, mother who may not have been be ready for it, maybe an unwed mother, someone you can help. Now, this is a very small organization. They don't have tons of money like Planned Parenthood that rips us off for millions every year. The Compassion and Hope is very small, one paid staff. And if you could help them out financially, I know they would be greatly appreciative. You're going to feel good about it, and you may save a life. Who knows? God bless you for what you do. Well, you'd have to be living in some other country, I guess. Maybe you couldn't even escape it in some other country unless you had no TV. What's going on in Boise? Add the words. They're at it again. You know, this thing has been coming back to haunt us now for several years. Former Senator LaFavor has been the principal cheerleader, I guess, and the ringmaster, the ringleader, however you want to say it. And it just astonishes me that we're at a point in Western civilization where we are looking for reasons to destroy, or not we, but some people, a very small group of people with a very loud voice and a lot of money are looking for reasons to destroy the traditional family and Western values that have been here, well, since they were Levitical values, you know, thousands of years ago. Before I get into that, let me remind you of, as I did about this disgusting travesty that's going on in our little town. And it shows you how far this agenda, the LGBTQ, they've added a couple more letters now. I heard when I was watching the debacle in Boise, LGBTQIA. I have no idea what IA is. Pretty soon they'll have 26 letters and we'll have a new alphabet. At any rate, it shows the influence and the impact that the LGBTQ are having on the way things are happening. Now remember, I told you last week, don't want to beat a dead horse, but I do want to remind you, remember several years ago when the city council, I guess with no thought whatsoever, approved this street fair, or whatever they called it, that the LGBTQ put on, and it was open, you know, it was wide open, men, women, and children could go. Some small group of families deliberately took their offspring. I had photographs, I don't have them anymore, but, well, I do in my vault, if you will. Photographs of one young father with his infant child on his shoulder watching some others playing ring toss. And the ring toss, you remember when you were a kid going to the carnival? You had those little pegs that stuck up, and you had that little ring made of rope or something, and you had to toss it, try to get it over the pegs, and it was almost impossible. If you never got the pegs that got you any prizes. Well, in this street fair presented by the LGBTQ, this particular ring toss was an inflatable penis, about a 5-foot tall penis. Now, isn't that a lovely sight for your children to see, ring tossing this? You know, there were people, same sex, same gender couples swapping spit and fondling each other in public view. It was a pretty disgusting scene. The city council approved that. I guess they didn't even bother to look into the credentials. I wonder if they ever do any kind of background check on these people before they approve things. You can bet if somebody on the council doesn't like you, they will. But anyway, so they had that. Then the next, whatever you want to call it, was the so-called Gay Pride Parade. So we can be just like the big guys in San Francisco. We can have our Gay Pride Parade also. Then the so-called non-discrimination ordinance. The words fail me on how to describe what a travesty that is. Second time I've used that word. I just can't think of any other way to describe the so-called non-discrimination ordinance, which in effect makes a new class of people over and above the rest of us. Now, you know, we've been down this road before. We had the referendum last year. The final tally, as you may recall, was the referendum was beaten by 56 votes. Started out at 141, I think it was. 3 hours later, it had dropped to 80. We took it to the elections office, had the state attorney general down there, and excuse me, we had a recall or a recount, dropped down to 56 votes. The LGBTQ people, who then called themselves Fair Pocatello, run up by Brenda Stanley, the public spokesperson for the hospital. And that might explain why my wife and I won't be going, if we have to have surgery, which my wife is going to have, we certainly won't be going here, because well, the ringleader is on the staff up there, and it might be a little touch and go for those of us who disagreed. And, you know, she signed the pink brick. She was very vocal in the back channels, not too much publicly, but she made her opinions about my wife and I and the referendum made through emails to her friends that we monitored. And so suffice to say, we wouldn't feel really secure going to our own big, beautiful hospital for treatment, because we know that Brenda Stanley and her friends are there. And who knows? Is that an accusation? No, it's an observation. But you don't just deliberately walk into a fire if you know it's going to burn you. Anyway, so that brings us up to date. And now the latest disgusting attack upon Christian values, moral values, community values is Corpus Christi, the play. You've probably heard about it. You've heard me talk about it. They're going to have 2 more plays, Friday and Saturday, and that'll do away with it. These people think so little of the Christian community that they even had this disgusting play on this last Sunday, last Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and it will continue. It's very interesting. I'm going to show you one of the trailers. I had 2 trailers that I picked off, just got them off the internet, that were promoting this degenerate play. Now remember, and the reason I call it a degenerate play is this is a parody. It is a deliberate stick in the eye to any person who is truly a person of faith, who believes what the Bible says, not what some fringe church says it is. But you and I, those of us who believe that Jesus Christ is our Savior, that the Bible is true, you know, that the common values that the Christian community, whether LDS, Orthodox, Western, it doesn't matter. These people want to slap us in the face, kick us in the gut, stick a thumb in our eye. And so they brought this degenerate play by Terrence McNally, who has won several awards for other degenerate plays. And it's interesting, the cast in this, you'll see in the trailer that there are men and women in the cast, but it was written to have only men. Terrence McNally is a sodomite. He's a homosexual. He's beyond same-sex attracted. He is a homosexual. He married another homosexual. So this is not a practice. This guy's got it down. And he wrote this degenerate play. Now in the trailer that shows men and women, but it was written for an all-male cast. And then some of the men playing the parts of the various disciples of Jesus Christ also play women, and to give different color to the play. There are 12 or 13 plays, actors, I think it is. Now here locally, the main character in this is actually not Jesus, it's Joshua. Well, I take it back. I shouldn't say, because they call Jesus Yeshua, the Hebrew word Joshua for Jesus. That's played by Mitchell Bray, and I don't know if that's former Councilman Bray's son or some relationship, same spelling. So, and it's in the Old Town Actors Studio down at 437 North Main, Studio G. Only holds 30 seats. My wife picked up something on the internet today. All 30 seats were sold out for last Friday or Saturday. So I'm assuming by the time they finalize to show the last one, they will have gotten all of the LGBT community, their enablers and supporters, to have gone to this play. I think they charge $10 a head, so I don't know if they make money for it or not. I don't know. Here's what the flyer said, promoting this degenerate play. Mitchell Bray, now I had a photograph, so this says Mitchell Bray in the front plays Joshua, Jesus, in the Old Town Actors Studio production, Corpus Christi. The other actors in the studio played the disciples, as well as a number of other characters in the play. And then I had that photo. It wouldn't show up on camera, so I didn't bring it in. Corpus Christi starts with a premise. Now, the premise itself is degenerate. There's no other word for it. Well, anti-Christian, inflammatory. I ask you again, can you imagine? We have 2,000 Muslims living in this community, most of them students in the university, most of them from Saudi Arabia, the originator of Wahhabism, which is extremely violent, extremely lethal Muslim theology. Can you imagine if these people had the guts, and they would never have the guts, to do something. Suppose they had a play about Muhammad. Can you imagine? Not just a cartoon, a play. But they don't have any problem with having a play parroting our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Starts with the premise: Jesus was gay. The premise created controversy when Terrence McNally debuted the show at the Manhattan Theater Club 17 years ago. The premise remains controversial today. There were intense protests on his opening night in 1998. Nevertheless, McNally, a four-time Tony-winning playwright, took his show on the road, first across the U.S. and eventually worldwide. Oh yeah, they're degenerates in every nation. In an interview for Broadway World, McNally stated, quote, "The play is a retelling of Christ's life and passion in a vocabulary that makes it more accessible to gay men and women who had previously been excluded from any place in his story of the Christian religions. All men are divine. That is the simple universal meaning of my interpretation of his life." Corpus Christi speaks to audiences who reject that being gay is a sin, and that's an interesting thing. They have rejected the truth, and accept that reimagining Jesus as gay can open a new perspective on Christianity at what it means to be Christian. These notions are repugnant to some Christians. They are worthwhile perspectives for other Christians and for many non-Christians too. And I would posit to you that people who do this sort of thing can call themselves a dog's fourth leg or fifth leg if they want to, but they're not Christians. I don't care if they call themselves Christians till the cows come home. You do not defame the Christ. You do not parody the gospel and call yourself a Christian. You can call yourself an eggplant if you want to, but you are not a Christian. That's Ralph Lillig. That's my take on it. Old Town Actors Studio opened in Pocatello in 2008. Its mission is to highlight theater that challenges and unites varying ideologies, diversities, oh, there's that word, and cultures to create an intimate experience between artists and southeastern Idaho audiences. Now, I confess to you, I like plays. I like live theater, I like live stage, and I am fond of interactive theater. This is beyond any interactive, this is deviance. There's nothing better you can say about it. And I like the way they always, the LGBTQ, their enablers, their supporters, their promoters, always like to throw in that diversity. They've made that word into something, just like they made the word gay, something that was never intended and is not. Although many may disagree with the premise of Corpus Christi, it certainly fulfills a goal of Old Town Actors Studio, and Old Town Actors Studio hopes it will provoke discussion. Well, I'm provoked. You can be assured of that. And then it says when the play is. It's not going tonight. I guess they took 2 nights off to get their diversity back together. And then it'll be on again at the 30th and 31st. I would ask you to call this phone number that I gave you last week. I'll give it again, and lodge your complaints. Tie up their phone forever. I don't care. 478-6886. That's where you call for reservations. Tell them what you think of their bringing this kind of filth into our little community. Corpus Christi is directed by Jason Bartosik and features the talents of Richard Baker, Mitchell Bray, Ted Bonman, Trent Clegg, Joseph Krupper, Keith Foster, Sean Grayson, Joby Haney, Andrew Castianis, J.P. Perna, Stephanie Ripley, Lakota Terrace, and Randy Tolman. Sherry Disenfree Swanson is stage manager. Lakota Terrace is costume coordinator. Ellen Loomis is props mistress, and Bob Swanson adapted the set. And I'm sure they take great pride in this production, this production. So that's that. Why do I tell you about this? Because it won't go away. This very small but vocal, well-financed, pretty well-organized group of people are determined to make the rest of us accept the unacceptable, or at least what 97% of the population. Now, I was listening, I was watching the business in Boise today, 21 hours of hearings, according to what the figure given out by the chairman. I've watched probably 6, maybe 8 hours of it. The first day, there were quite a few people, regular people, ministry, business owners, people from all walks of life, who came in to give testimony against HB2. And that's this new thing that would add the words, and where's my paper here? Add the words, 4 words, sexual orientation and gender identity. And I would posit, I would say to you that the reason they want these is not because the homosexual, the same-sex attracted, the LGBTQ community, not because as they use the canard they need to be protected, they feel unsafe. I would posit, because let's face it, I was watching today and yesterday, and there were several people that came, mostly women, came to the microphone. Looking at them, you would have absolutely no clue to their proclivities. 2 of the women that come immediately to mind, one was very attractive, one was, you know, just a regular lady, dressed feminine, female, both of them talking about having their stay-at-home wives and how they were supporting their stay-at-home wives so they could take care of their children. A couple of young men that, if you saw them, you would have no idea what their proclivities were. And I tell you that because most of us don't care. We don't care if you're gay, lesbian, bisexual, trans, whatever you want to call yourself. Call yourself, you know, ramen noodles. I don't care. But I do care when you force me to accept something because you want it, whether I like it or not. That's when I get my back up. Most Americans are like that, I think. We don't like to be forced to take something because you want it. Now, I would posit that the reason they want these four words in there is not to protect regular homosexual types, same-sex attracted types, whatever, because 9 out of 10 of us would never spot 9 out of 10 of them. They come to work, they look like the rest of us, they act like the rest of us, they blend, you know, they're camouflaged, concealed, however you want to say it. And we're not going to ask everybody coming through the door, are you gay? Well, we're not going to let you work here if you're gay. We wouldn't know. Those that are obvious are obviously the transgenders, those who are chromosomally female or those who are chromosomally male, portraying the other sex, the other gender. There was one fellow that gave testimony yesterday, and I'll tell you, this is a scary dude. He's a police officer in Idaho Falls. He's been with the department, I think he said he'd been there 8 years, and he's assigned to the abused, what we in LA would have called the abused child follow-up unit. He is a so-called transgender. In other words, his chromosomes are male, but he's decided that he's female. Now, I don't know if he has gone through the reverse surgery. I really don't care. Other than to say, these men who try to portray themselves as females demand to be called females, and this man is a police officer, so he carries a gun. He has some training. This was a very angry man. When you watched him trying to keep his composure, his body language is angry. He's defiant. He's angry that the general population are not accepting him as a female. He calls himself Danielle. I'm assuming that his chromosomal correct name is Daniel. I don't know. He was at one time married, I guess. He has 4 children. But for whatever reasons, he's decided that he is now Danielle. He's still on the police department, but he comes in drag now. He comes dressed as a female with his multicolored hair and his bad makeup. Nobody looking at this person would ever suspect that this is anything other than a male in drag. And I don't say that to be cruel. I'm saying that as an observation. I was trained to make observations, but we all, and let me put this whole business about profiling to rest. We all profile. We all judge books by their covers. It's after we open the book and read it as to when we decide whether or not we like it. But judging just from seeing this fellow, you're going to scratch your head if you don't know, if you haven't seen his testimony, and say, why is he in drag? Now, he's a big guy. And as I said, he gives an angry countenance in his body language. He's very careful, and he's doing his best to suppress it, but he's angry. And his job is doing investigations of child crimes. And I have to tell you the truth, were I the father of a young child and went to the police department and had this man assigned to me, I would run, and I would take my child and we would run. This is not, I'm sorry if I know it's going to offend the LGBT, it's going to, the LGBTQ, they're enablers, they're supporters, they're enthusiasts. I know it's going to anger them, and they're going to do the usual Lillig, the hateful so-and-so, whatever it is. But there's no way you can hide your thoughts when you see something like this. There was another guy that testified, came in there, he looked like a linebacker for the Bears, also in drag. And I'm sorry, there's no way in the world you're ever going to think that that's a female. Now, this fellow Danielle was really angry, and he was putting forth in his angry tones, his social security number matches his adopted identity. And he goes through the litany. His badge matches his adopted identity. Everything does. So why can't he be accepted for the female that he is? Well, until this fellow has had the reverse surgery, he's just a man in women's dressing. I'm sorry, it's the way I look at it. May not be politically correct, but that's the way I see it. You may see it otherwise. And I'm always amazed when these fellows, they're transgender. Now, I guess transgender means they don't want to change their parts, but they still want you to think of them as female, and they want to portray themselves as females. To me, that without understanding that mentality, and who does? Psychologists have tried for years to understand that mentality. Nobody does. Some will try to tell you they do. They don't. But the mentality of this fellow, who looks like he's well over 6 feet tall, dressed as a woman, if he hasn't had the reverse plumbing, then he's still a man dressed in women's clothes. And I'm sorry, he can tell me whatever he wants. He can get as angry as he wants and demand that I call him Danielle. I'll call him whatever he wants to be called, but I will never accept him as a female. Most natural law people probably won't. Now, I say that because at least the fellow who's had the transsexual change, where he's had his equipment changed, his plumbing reversed, however you want to say it, at least that man has had the guts to really go the whole distance. And he may, by chromosome, still be a female. I mean, it may be a male, but at least he's had the courage to try the whole thing. I can't agree with it, but I find that a lot more courageous than the guy who's still packing all the equipment and portraying himself as a female. Well, I got a little off the point. We're going to get more into that, but I've got a trailer to show you. Now, I showed you a trailer a couple of weeks ago about this disgusting and degenerate Corpus Christi. Are we good to go on that? Okay, let's take a look at this trailer.
There's a story being told ritually about creation and so on. That's where first theater started to develop.
I baptize you and I recognize your divinity as a human being.
The story of Christ, I just want to tell it again, and I want to tell it in terms that made it accessible and understandable and realer to me.
Some theater news for you guys. In May, there's a new play premiering in Texas about a gay Jesus.
An unusual take on the story of Jesus Christ and why some claim it is a play that's gone too far.
There's a bomb-sniffing dog, and they're installing metal detectors in the theater.
God will judge for what's going on.
I've been waiting for you.
We all have.
The rules, the structure of religion was like, okay, this is one thing in my life that makes sense.
God hates homosexuality. God hates you.
You are hypocrites.
This is the scary part of the trip.
You hate what you don't understand. You hate what you're not willing to look at. You're not willing to.
It's either separation of church and state, or it's not.
Prejudice is a very wicked thing, and so contrary to everything of what is the real Christian gospel.
You have perverted my Father's words. No, this play has perverted the scriptural teaching.
I don't choose to live a homosexual lifestyle. I don't choose that. That's who I am.
If I'm writing a play to show that I'm as made in God's image as the next person, this casting says we all are, men, women, young, old, very many different colors are also made in God's image.
You know how you're gonna die?
If, say, the show were interrupted by somebody in the audience.
Somebody wandering in, unassuming.
If it sounds threatening, we're going to walk away.
You can't get rid of some of the things you are very carefully taught.
I want to correct that man out front because I can't disagree with him more. God does not hate gays. Very good book. If you are same-sex attracted or homosexual, you may want to read it. If you are not same-sex attracted or homosexual, you may still want to read it. Is God Anti-Gay? It's a very small book, just, I don't know how many pages, very small. Is God anti-gay? God is not anti-gay. God created all of us. And Jesus the Christ is certainly not anti-gay. He offers redemption to all. But he doesn't say, get on with it and enjoy yourself. He does hold people accountable. The LGBTQ would have you say, would say, well, he's never addressed it. And then when I was watching this thing, going back to what I was saying, this man is wrong. God does not hate gays. Jesus does not hate gays. God would have none lost, in spite of their proclivities, or despite their sins, despite their diversions, whatever you want to call it. God would have no one lost, not the most evil or the most gentle. He wants all to live in His light. But there are many who will be lost because they will not give up on this. They won't change their minds. There was a parade of ministers and clergy at the Boise today. Many of them wearing the collars. The ones that were most conspicuous were the Episcopalians. They wore a purple shirt with a white collar. There were some UUs. They're interesting. And there was, I think, a United Methodist or something like that coming out and saying that basically this does not speak against Christian values. I don't know what Bible they're reading. I really don't, because it's not the same one that most evangelical Orthodox Christians are reading. It's not the same one that the LDS are reading. I don't know what their Bible is, but they certainly have some interesting interpretations. One of the things that they were very fond of saying is, Jesus told the woman at the well, I don't condemn you either. There's more to it than just that, though. Jesus told the woman, after challenging the men who wanted to stone her, and you remember he said, you who are without sin cast the first stone. And guilt overtook these men, and they all dropped their stones and left. And then Jesus told the woman, neither do I condemn you. But she had already confessed, and she was an adulteress. So he knew what he was facing here. Jesus knows anyway. But she admitted to her sin. Many homosexuals, most of them, won't admit to it. They refuse to. Regardless of the Bible, Genesis through Revelation, read the first book of Romans. You have to be pretty clever to twist anything out of that to support homosexual activity. I mean, far cleverer than I am with words. But he did tell her. He said, neither do I condemn you. She had already admitted her adultery, and that's why she was going to be stoned. He said, neither do I condemn you. Now go forth and sin no more. So he told her, he knows she's a sinner, and he's telling her, don't sin anymore. Don't continue in your adultery, or don't continue being a drunkard, or don't continue being a wife beater, or a store robber, or a child abuser. Don't continue sin. So he was addressing sin. So when these clergy try to befuddle regular folks like me and say, well, Jesus didn't have any problem. Oh, yeah, he did. Remember, he said that he was not here to repeal the laws, but to fulfill them. And the laws, going back to Genesis, talk about a man and a woman, complementary. Leviticus, and you can go through the whole scripture. I forget how many various, 13 places or something like that, Old Scripture and New Testament. And they're very, very direct on this. Anyway, so that's where we are now. The non-discrimination ordinance got through. The homosexual community, the LGBTQ, feel emboldened, empowered, and now they feel stronger, and they're going to push their agenda. And now there was an interesting case in California. My wife found a piece of information on the internet. There's a document, 59 pages, 59 pages in very tiny print of serial litigators who are not allowed to litigate in the state of California. There are people, there was one guy that comes to mind when I was still with the Ninth Circuit, we used to call it Ninth Circus Court of Appeals. He was very definitely a handicapped man in a wheelchair, and he made a very good living by litigating people who were not, was that ADA, where you can't get your wheelchair through the doors, or you can't get into the toilet without help and that kind of thing. I forget the proper terms. And he ruined a number of just small mom and pop businesses through litigation because they had to spend everything they had to defend themselves and then pay off this blackmailer, this extortionist. Eventually, it took years, but finally an attorney had the courage to take it before the Ninth Circus, and the Ninth Circus Court of Appeals, even they could no longer tolerate this man, and they refused. They told him, "We won't hear any more of your litigation. Stop it." But he made a very good living. What's going to happen, it hasn't happened yet, and it may not happen for the next few years, but you're going to see more and more litigation based upon these so-called non-discrimination ordinances where somebody doesn't get their own way. Like the guy in England that went to the Church of England, demanded that the head minister of the church marry him and his same-sex partner. The minister said, "I can't. I'm the head of the Church of England." And this guy sued the Church of England, and he was quoted. They asked him why he did this, and his exact words was, "Because I didn't get what I wanted." That's the mentality that we're dealing with now. So you've got all those people up in Boise, 21 hours worth of sad story after sad story and anecdote after anecdote, little of any factual stuff. Yes, there were transgenders. Most of those who came in were females portraying males who came in and told their sad stories. The interesting thing for me watching this was not one of them was not successful. In spite of all their crying and whining and moaning about how tough life is for them, whatever, all of this belching about their problems, they were all successful. They all had good jobs. They all had families. Kind of contradicts their whole premise that they need protection from the rest of us. I would tell you, I would say the rest of us need protection from them. All right, well, a couple of quick things. We've got a little time, a couple of quick things out of the paper here. Did you see this this article by Mike Petrovsky? Mike doesn't write a whole lot. He's writing a little more now, but he's on, I think he's still on the board, editorial board for the newspaper. I believe he's a conservative. He seems to write on issues that we seem to agree on, and I'm definitely a conservative. Anyways, very short article, January the 23rd, just a couple of days ago. The wife of a Christian Idaho pastor imprisoned in Iran said President Barack Obama told her son he would try to get his father released before the boy's 7th birthday this March. Naghmeh Abedini and her 2 children, Rebecca, 8, and Jacob, 6, met with Obama in private Wednesday when the president was in Boise, Abedini's hometown, to discuss the possible release of her husband, Pastor Saeed Abedini, who's been held by the Iranian government for almost 2.5 years. Obama's meeting with the family lasted about 10 minutes. Saeed was convicted of undermining Iran's national security on January 27, 2013, and sentenced to 8 years in Iran's Evin prison. It's a horrible, horrible hole. A maximum security facility where he's been housed since September 2012, or shortly after his house arrest. It is believed by the ACLJ that Saeed has been tortured at the facility. Saeed, a former Muslim who grew up in Iran, converted to Christianity in the year 2000. That was good news. Now, you know, Obama, he's a prevaricator, and the mendacity rolls from his lips. So I don't know if he'll actually do anything about it, but it gives some hope to that family. Pardon me. A lot of us have been praying for this man's release for several years now. Oh, a couple of years. All right, this is from the ISJ, January 24th. And this is just the highlights of it. Unemployment drops, but Bannock is higher than the state. Idaho's seasonally adjusted unemployment rate fell another 0.2% percentage point in December to a 7-year low of 3.7%, with 23 of Idaho's 44 counties at or below the statewide rate, according to the Idaho Department of Labor. Bannock County was not one of those 23. The unemployment rate for Bannock County was 4.1% in December, down from 4.3% in November. All the other counties in southeast Idaho were below the state average. Bingham County had 3.5%, Bear Lake and Oneida 3%, Caribou 3.4%, Franklin and Power 3.6%. Bannock County had 39,706 people in the civilian labor force during December, and Bingham. Now, I don't know the figures. We're very top-heavy on government jobs here in this city. Some 4,000 or 5,000. I'm not really sure of the number. Anywhere from 3,500 to 5,000 at the university, the largest employer. I don't know how many school District 25 has, and they've got a ton of them. City Hall, counties, and buildings. all of the good-paying jobs, the hospital, on manufacturing, those are not, they're not government work, at least the on isn't. The good-paying jobs, so I would say that the majority of good-paying jobs are civil service. Otherwise, I guess we would have no employment here. I don't know. Grace Lutheran Church has announced that they are going to break ground this year for the new $2.5 million private high school, the first of its kind in the area. The congregation voted this last Saturday morning to give a 16-member steering committee free rein to raise funds, finalize the curriculum, establish tuition rates as well as price, and hire building contractors. Now, it's important for you to know this will be a blue ribbon high school. The only other high school in town is at Calvary Church. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just it's an online high school, very small, a very good curriculum, dedicated staff who can help the children, but it's not a traditional style of high school. And we had testimony, if you want to call it that, at the hearing, the meeting this last Saturday, from a very prominent realtor in town who has had something like 7 calls from people wanting to come here from out of state for good, high-paying jobs here locally. And when they were told there was no other high school other than the 3 publicly funded high schools, they basically said, and I'm paraphrasing it, they said, well, call us when you get a parochial high school, a private high school. So, and there has been for a long time, there has been an identified need in this community for a non-public high school, for a parochial high school. Now, the Grace Lutheran High School will, their first class will most likely be made up mostly, if not entirely, of their 7th graders this year. First class won't begin until 2016. I think the class size, we're going to try to keep all of the classes, I think it was just 26 maximum. They want to get 20 for that first class. It looks like they've already got people pre-enrolled to get that 20, I guess. It will not be cheap, and I mean cheap like just a knockoff of whatever's going. It'll be a first-rate school. It will be expensive for those who want to send their children there. We have many high-paid people in this community who can and will afford it. There will be entrance exams to go to this high school. You don't just go because you want to go and your folks can afford it. You will have to pass an entrance exam. And it's not meant to fail people. It is meant to see those who can come in and benefit from a very rigorous traditional style of teaching. It's quite an enhancement for this community. If you're interested, I suggest you call the Grace Lutheran School. You can get I don't have the phone number with me. Call Grace Lutheran School and tell them, I've got a kid that's in 7th or 8th grade and is going to be ready for high school. What's going on? How can I enroll? What do we have to do? I think you're going to be excited about the curriculum. Among other things, they're trying to work up a curriculum now that will allow graduating students from the Grace Lutheran High School at the end of the 4 years and they graduate, they will be able to accumulate up to 32 transferable college credits right here from ISU. That's big. I mean, that's a year of college right there. So it's going to be a first-rate high school. I urge you to call them if you have youngsters that you want them in the private sector and you want them to do well. Call Grace Lutheran School and ask them about the high school. I think you're going to be excited about it. Many of us are. And speaking of schools, now one of the things that Pastor Dinger tried to make very clear at the meeting the other day, and he was completely sincere about this, having this high school is not meant to denigrate the public school system. It's nothing at all like that. It's an enhancement. It's a step up, if you will. It's a private school, and students will have to pay for it. So, it's students, parents who send their kids there are obviously going to be serious. But it's not meant to downplay or downgrade the public school system. Having said that, I have to go to January 25th, just a couple days ago, School District 25 will ask voters for $9.25 million. Mike O'Donnell did a column. I'm just giving you the high spot. Superintendent Mary Wagner and other School District 25 officials don't like having to go to the voters with hats in hand every 2 years, but supplemental levy elections to keep schools functioning have been a reality in Pocatello since 1984. 2 years ago, voters in the Pocatello-Chubbuck School District approved a $7.5 million two-year levy that runs out this fiscal year. In March, the district will ask voters to approve a $9.25 million levy for the next 2 years. I will be seeking information on why they need $9.25 million. I suggest you do so too, because that $9.25 million, that's $2 million more than the last time. We fought it last time. My wife and I fought it, and others fought it because they wanted $8.5 million that time. They settled for $7.5. Settled for. All right. Well, I've got the other big thing in the news outside of our state and what's going on up in Boise is the nonstop continuing terrorism of Islam against the rest of the world. As I used the term several weeks ago, Islam is a darkness that is descending upon the world. If the fanatical Wahhabists, the Salafis, the ISIS, and the rest of these guys, if they get their way, we will be returned to the Stone Age. The whole world under domination by a small group, which is the way gangsters always operate, and we will regress 1,400 years, 14 centuries, if they get their own way. At any rate, I've got a film I'd like you to read, or like you to watch. This is by David Wood. You've seen David Wood on my program before. You may be familiar with him outside of this. David Wood is a very scholarly student on Islam. He kind of parodies things sometimes. He can be sarcastic, and he likes to poke sticks now and then, but he tells you the truth. And so we've got a film here. Let's see, this is called Sharia America. Are we ready on that, Josh? Please watch this.
Hello, America. As I'm sure you already know, not long ago, Pastor Terry Jones and his church put the Quran on trial, found it guilty, and sentenced it to this. Now, I've said before that I'm against burning books and that I disagree with the actions of Pastor Jones, but that's the great thing about America. We're allowed to disagree. I can say, hey, Pastor Jones, I think book burning is backwards and barbaric. And he can say, too bad, these are desperate times. We're trying to make a point. The reason people can discuss their differences and not kill each other in the United States is that over the past 2 centuries, we've come to respect the free speech rights of all citizens. In countries that haven't learned to respect certain basic freedoms, disagreements often lead to violence and bloodshed, as you can see from the deadly protests in Afghanistan. This is why it's so disturbing that U.S. lawmakers are now apparently looking for ways to limit free speech about Islam. Senator Lindsey Graham recently said this.
You know, I wish we could find some way to hold people accountable. Free speech is a great idea, but we're in a war. During World War II, you had limits on what you could say if it would inspire the enemy.
Freedom of speech is a great idea, but not if it might lead to problems. As the mighty Patrick Henry said, give me liberty so long as it doesn't offend Muslims.
Anytime we can push back here in America against actions like this that put our troops at risk, we ought to do it.
The government needs to push back against free speech. Let me see if I've got this straight. The U.S. military and its allies are engaged in Operation Enduring Freedom in Afghanistan. One of the goals of this mission is to bring a lasting democracy to the Afghan people. Let's face it, we're trying to make Afghanistan more like the West, at least in terms of minority rights, women's rights, and so on. But according to Senator Graham, in order to make Afghanistan more like America, we have to make America more like Afghanistan. If we want to win Operation Enduring Freedom over there, we need to start Operation Enduring Sharia over here. Yes, if you want victory over the Taliban, just let the Taliban revise the Bill of Rights. Some people are worried that Senator Graham's plan, if successful, would be the beginning of Sharia in the United States. I hate to be the one to inform everyone, but we've already got Sharia in the United States. And no, I'm not talking about Dearborn, Michigan, where Judge Mark Summers and Judge Michael J. Callahan have ruled that police have probable cause to arrest a Christian, even if the Christian hasn't committed a crime and hasn't been accused of committing a crime. The Fourth Amendment no longer protects Christians from illegal search and seizure in the city of Dearborn. But right now I'm not talking about a single city. Sharia has already replaced part of the Bill of Rights of the U.S. Constitution. Sounds crazy, right? It would sound crazy to me too if I didn't know what I'm about to say. Let's look at a few video clips. Here's Secretary of State Hillary Clinton condemning Quran burning while speaking at a Muslim iftar dinner during Ramadan.
I am heartened by the clear, unequivocal condemnation of this disrespectful, disgraceful act.
According to President Obama, God is against burning the Quran, and if you pray about it, the angels will tell you.
And he says he's praying on it.
Yeah, I hope he listens to those better angels.
A few days ago, General David Petraeus, commander of the U.S. forces in Afghanistan, condemned Pastor Jones for burning the Holy Quran.
We condemn the action of an individual in the United States who burned a Holy Quran. That action was hateful, it was intolerant, and it was extremely disrespectful.
So, there you have it, the official position of U.S. leaders on burning a religious text. My question for Secretary of State Clinton and President Obama and General Petraeus is this. Do you think Americans are so dull, ignorant, stupid, slow-witted, and scatterbrained that we forgot about this little incident?
Bibles written in Pashto and Dari, the two most common Afghan languages. Bibles sent by a church to a U.S. soldier in Afghanistan. Bibles that were later burned by the U.S. government.
Who burned the Bibles? A bunch of Muslim radicals?
Burned by the U.S. government.
Who? A toothless hillbilly straight out of Deliverance?
Burned by the U.S. government.
The U.S. government?
The U.S. government.
But I thought only racist, intolerant bigots burned holy books. That's what I've been repeatedly told by the same government that burned these Bibles.
It was their best judgment at the time. The best way to deal with it was to destroy them. And I understand that they were burned.
Why would the U.S. government burn Bibles?
The leadership confiscated these Bibles so they could not be distributed here in Afghanistan.
I don't get it. Wouldn't the Muslims of Afghanistan welcome Christian evangelists with open arms on account of Islam being so peaceful and such?
A U.S. military spokesman tells CNN that kind of religious outreach could have provoked a violent backlash against Americans in this devoutly Muslim nation.
Interesting. You don't burn the Quran, because if you do, Muslims might go on a killing spree. But you do burn the Bible, because if you don't, Muslims might go on a killing spree.
Islam has a proud tradition of tolerance.
But why burn the Bibles?
The decision was made to throw the Bibles away, and in war zones, U.S. troops are required to burn their trash.
Ah, now I understand. You had to burn the Bibles because it's military policy to burn garbage. Would you like to know what the military's policy is when it comes to the Quran? I have here a copy of a Department of Defense memorandum distributed at Gitmo, explaining how U.S. soldiers are to handle the Quran if they absolutely must touch a copy. Check out the highlighted portion. Clean gloves will be put on in full view of the detainees prior to handling. 2 hands will be used at all times when handling the Quran in manner signaling respect and reverence. Care should be used so that the right hand is the primary one used to manipulate any part of the Quran due to the cultural association with the left hand. Handle the Quran as if it were a fragile piece of delicate art.
The Holy Quran, the Holy Quran, the Holy Quran.
According to U.S. government policy, you must handle the Quran with respect and reverence, as if it were a delicate piece of art. But feel free to burn the Bible, because that's just what you do with garbage. If you burn the Quran, the government will condemn your actions. If you burn the Bible, hey, had to be done. What's this mean? It means that the U.S. government has given the Quran a privileged status over all other books. They say it's wrong to burn religious texts, but their actions show they really only care about one religious text. This means, of course, that the government has violated the Establishment Clause of the First Amendment. They're giving a special position to the Holy Book of Islam. And what has replaced the Establishment Clause? How about Surah 9, verse 33?
The Holy Quran teaches that
it is He who has sent His messenger, Muhammad, with guidance and the religion of truth, Islam, to make it superior over all religions, even though the mushrikun, polytheists, pagans, idolaters, disbelievers in the oneness of Allah, hate it. If you have a Quran, you might want to read this verse in context. Verse 29 commands Muslims to fight those who do not believe in Allah. Verse 30 condemns Christians and Jews and calls for our destruction. Verse 31 claims that Christians and Jews have abandoned pure monotheism. Verse 32 says that unbelievers try in vain to put out Allah's light. And finally, verse 33 declares that Allah will make Islam superior to all other religions. So our leaders are giving Islam the special treatment it demands.
A holy Quran, a holy Quran, a holy Quran.
This is why, even though the vast majority of religiously motivated hate crimes in the U.S. are directed against Jews, we're having hearings on anti-Muslim bigotry. Why are Muslims more important than Jews? Surah 3, verse 110 says to Muslims,
the Holy Quran tells us,
you are the best of peoples ever raised up for mankind. Muslims are the best people in the world. But who are the worst people in the world? Jews, Christians, and other non-Muslims. Surah 98, verse 6.
As the Holy Quran tells us,
verily, those who disbelieve in the religion of Islam, the Quran, and Prophet Muhammad, from among the people of the Scripture, Jews and Christians, and al-mushrikun will abide in the fire of hell. They are the worst of creatures. We're the worst of creatures. Muslims are the best of peoples. That's what this book says, and it's obviously the official position of the U.S. government. Oh, I'm sorry. Should I be using my right hand, President Obama? I don't want the FBI kicking down my door.
And I consider it part of my responsibility as President of the United States to fight against negative stereotypes of Islam wherever they appear.
What Senator Graham is suggesting then isn't that we introduce Sharia into America. We've already done that. He's telling us we should find ways to expand the domain of Sharia. Come on, folks, it's already replaced part of the First Amendment. Why not finish the project and take out the free speech clause too? So, after fighting for our independence from Britain and vowing in the preamble of the Constitution that we would secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, after enduring a bloody war to end slavery and marching for women's rights, after defeating the Nazis and quarantining communism, America dies a quiet death under the knife of political correctness, leaving us with a strange, heterogeneous mixture of dwindling American greatness and Islamic supremacism. It's a brave new world, my friends. Welcome to Sharia America, where becoming a dhimmi is a citizen's duty. Unless, of course, we decide to fight the power.
In order to fight the power, fight the power. Fight the power.
Fight the power. Fight the power.
We've got to fight the powers that be.
So there's your Islam message for tonight. I've got to go back and tie up a point because I kind of got myself off point. I was talking about this police officer, and I think it's in Idaho Falls. Maybe he's a sheriff's deputy. Might be a sheriff's deputy. I told you about the fact that he demands to be called a female. All of his documents say he's a female. We don't know. You know, his chromosomes say he's a male. We don't know if he's had the reverse surgery or anything. I don't know about that, but he presents in female clothing. Why is this a problem? Well, for me it's a problem because years ago, 30 plus years ago, I worked investigative follow-ups on abused children. And I've seen pedophilia firsthand. I've seen abused children firsthand. I've seen the LGBTQ people who are in denial about pedophilia and what happens within the community. Does that mean all LGBTQ are pedophiles? No, but a lot are. A lot have been abused themselves. And so I worry, but a sheriff's department or a police department who will deliberately put this gender bender. And remember, this whole beef in Boise right now is to add the words, and the words are sexual orientation, whatever that means, and gender identity. And this guy was very adamant about being called Danielle and being a female. Recall, if you will, and if you haven't seen this, I'll try to help you with it, the police officer in Phoenix PD, maybe a year ago, Christopher J. Wilson. Christopher J. Wilson was a veteran police officer. They put him in the juvenile division, working as the juvenile coordinator with the young kids there. Well, they had to arrest Mr. Officer Wilson because he was violating a 14-year-old boy, and then it came to light because the 14-year-old boy had a 16-year-old boyfriend, and the 16-year-old boyfriend, the 14-year-old boy's mother had allowed the 14-year-old boy to move out and live with the 16-year-old. I don't even try to keep up with it. It's unbelievable. The 16-year-old boyfriend wanted a job with the federal government, so he kicked the 14-year-old out. Somehow, I guess he went to the police officer with whom he was having sex, and the police officer, I guess, refused him or rebuffed him, and the kid let the cat out of the bag. And so this police officer, who was assigned to the juvenile division or juvenile affairs, turns out he was a child molester. And that's why things like this Danielle guy really bother me, seriously bother me. Well, we're just about out of time. I appreciate you joining me this week. I hope you'll join me again next week. We'll have other things that'll make us just as well loved in the LGBTQ community and the Muslim community as we have tonight, and other things that we find along the way. In the meantime, don't forget to tune in for Aaron Hayes' program, 5 o'clock Sundays on PBS Channel 64 now. In the meantime, God bless you. Have a good, safe week. We hope to see you next week. Good night.